And I think just to begin, to realize that it's actually, we're in an industry, the transport logistics industry and the services that support it, it's actually a really, really important industry in terms of the economy and the growth of the country, in South Africa specifically. And just to sort of start off with a little bit of economics of where we're at. So, two graphs, left is South Africa's GDP, right is the US. And you can see there's a nice steady little blue curve, blue line, and it goes on a sort of upward trajectory. And that red line, that is the amount of the economy that is the transport sector. So you'll notice on the South African side, that line is pretty flat, but there's a sort of a curve going upwards, meaning transport logistics is becoming slightly more expensive every year. We have a look at the US. Firstly, their GDP is like off the charts. You know, that line is going skywards. And you'll notice the red line is very strongly going downwards. So if you're in the transport sector, you might think to yourself, well, hang on a sec, transport's getting cheaper. This is not such a good place to be. We're going to be losing money, right? But it's actually it's the portion of the GDP. So it's getting, US is getting stronger, transport is getting cheaper. Very simple calculation. The cost of doing business in the US is getting cheaper. The cost of doing business in South Africa, getting more expensive. This is a major problem. Major problem. What does it mean? Ultimately, every day, our cost of living is getting more and more expensive. So, to correct this, we need to put some controls in place. We put some efficiencies in place. We can bring down our costs, bring down transport. Goods and services need to be moved around, and we need to use vehicles and various modes of transport to actually ship that. And that is essentially what we're here to do. So if we can manage to bring...
Excuse me, do you mind a question now, or would you prefer questions?
There's going to be plenty of time for questions at the end. Okay, so essentially bringing down the cost of doing transport, ultimately it's going to improve our standard of living. So let's see what that might look like in the future. This is a 2-minute video, and we're going to see what that vision might look like if everything happens the way we want it to. So this is a company called DP World, Dubai Ports. They build and run ports all over the world.
On demand.
And this is
Today
their vision
it's
of the
novel,
future.
tomorrow it will be expected. The global growth of e-commerce is driving a consumer behavior shift where goods and services are delivered rapidly, immediately. DP World sees the need for an advanced new network to support this future. Throughout history, cargo has always been the catalyst for transport revolutions. Today, DP World has partnered with Virgin Hyperloop One to realize the next leap in transport and make Hyperloop a reality. Pushing the boundaries of innovation, having the courage to do something different. The new cutting-edge linear electric motor propels the pod magnetically through the interportal. A series of pumps remove nearly all the air inside the tube to allow for an energy-efficient, quiet, and incredibly fast journey. Our future ports will integrate Hyperloop technology for synchronized, seamless, intelligent movement of cargo. On demand, direct, autonomous. Hyperloop can deliver exceptional service for high-priority on-demand goods at the cost of trucking and the speed of flight. Sustainable operations powered by renewable energy. Utilizing network capacity for both freight and passengers. Goods are seamlessly transferred to autonomous vehicles while passengers are taken to the heart of the city. Rapid, effortless deliveries and the freedom from having to plan too far ahead. Efficient supply chains that unlock greater capacity for growth. It's what the world demands. Introducing DP World Cargo Speed.
Okay, pretty cool, huh? I'm pretty excited about seeing things like that. It's actually an unreal thing to look at. And every single one of those technologies that are in that video, they actually exist. Hyperloop, granted, in development, maybe way like a 10, 20 years away. Maybe less, you never know with our Landsman, Elon Musk, we'll see what he does. But it's an incredible thing, and you'll notice probably that there was a pretty good marketing exercise with branding everywhere. Every single one of those modalities of transport had DP World written all over it. And the truth is, it's never going to happen. As nice as those technologies are, and having a single operator across multiple modalities, it's not going to happen. It's just impossible. However, that seamless integrated supply chain is possible if we collaborate. If the industry around telematics, in the transport industry, if we get our data together, if we work together and collaborate and bring in certain ideas, which I'll explain, we potentially could move into a space where we can have a seamless integrated supply chain. So, how's it going to happen? So, this image, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but this is New York, 5th Avenue in 1900. Everyone's getting around on horse and cart or shepherd's pony. And if you look really carefully, you will notice that guy over there. It's the first combustion engine vehicle running around in New York City. Now, horse and cart, dirty, smelly, have to feed the horse every day, you need to give him a place to sleep. There's no going, you need to take your horse on holiday or find someone to look after it. It's a pain. That's a real pain. So a short 13 years later, that same street in New York City, 5th Avenue, there's one single horse and cart there. Within such a short period of time, 13 years, we swapped from horse and cart to car. And you're going to tell me that's never going to happen in South Africa. How could something like that happen here? Anyone heard of Uber? At least one person in this room came here on Uber, right? Okay, this is a technology that was developed in Europe, I believe, and within not even 5 years, they had a presence in over 100 countries, or 100 cities across the world. Now, there's another little company. Heard of them? Okay. Do you know what these guys invented? The digital camera. Some techie came up with this brilliant idea to be able to record images on a digital format, took it to management and said, here, I've got the future. Do you know what they did with this? They locked it up in a cupboard and said, this isn't going to see the light of day. We've got a good business. Why? In 1997, Kodak had 60,000 employees. In 2000, they had record revenue of, it was $14 billion in the year 2000. And a decade later, bankrupt, cannibalized. They decided internally, we've got the technology for the future, but we're not going to release it out. We're going to keep it because we've got a good business. We've got this good business, why should we sell another product and kill our existing market? So what happened? Their competitors killed them. They got knocked out. So what happened there? So what tends to happen, when disruption happens, when a new technology arrives, what happens is things start off really expensive and very big in the tech space. So on the left there, that picture, these 4 guys and a massive truck, you know what they're delivering? A 5 megabyte hard drive. Now, a few decades later, that 5 megabyte hard drive can hold one song, right? The iPhone on the right can hold 100,000 songs, and I can put it in my pocket, like chalk and cheese. Now, the other thing to notice, so in telemetry and in the connected vehicle, that phone, which can hold 500 gigabytes of data, within 7 minutes in a connected vehicle, an autonomous connected vehicle, will actually be filled up with data within 7 minutes. So we're moving into a space where we're producing incredible amounts of data. We've got amazing capacity to store data that's much cheaper than it's ever been. But at the same time, we need to be able to extend that even further because the requirements are growing. It's the rate at which things are progressing is absolutely exponential. As you can see over here, this little curve is basically how technology gets adopted. At the bottom, we've got a really shallow flat line. Things are really expensive. The new smartphone comes out. The whatever that new technology might be, and people slowly start adopting it. The early adopters. As the technology develops and its popularity develops, innovation happens and it becomes cheaper. As it becomes cheaper, more people take it on. We get a strong curve upwards. Eventually we get to a point where it peaks, it's cheap, it's commoditized, and this is ubiquitous and everyone's using it. So, coming to the space that we're in, connected vehicles, telemetry, using our data, the things that are happening at the moment. Electrification, electric vehicles. So, we started off a slide or two ago showing horse and cart. Horse and cart are great, but if I can have cheaper, more convenient, safer, less maintenance, etc., wouldn't I replace my horse and cart with a car? And we saw that happening. So today, we've got combustion engine, which is better than the horse, but we can go a step further, we can go electric. No maintenance, safer, cheaper. What else we got there? Greener. The rest of it. Autonomous driving. So, anyone deal with truck drivers in the room? Morning. So, what's the solution to the churn of drivers? Replace them with robots. It's going to happen. It's cheaper. Ultimately, what drives business is economics. Nothing more than that. If we can offer services that are going to be cost-effective, safer, greener, cheaper, the rest of it, it's going to replace whatever we're using at the moment. And if that's drivers, we're going to be replacing them with autonomous vehicles. In terms of diversity diverse mobility, so diverse mobility is all about different modes of transport. So, just watching my time, not going to go too much into that, and ultimately connectivity. So, to talk a little bit about connectivity, main technologies at the moment that are being used in telematics, literally to communicate, is GSM, cell phone technology, and satellite. So, these two technologies are ubiquitous, but quite expensive. Yesterday, I'm sure a couple of you heard the guys from SquidNet talking. So they've got technology called Sigfox, and there are a few others. That's one technology. There's something called RPMA, and they basically fall into a category called LPWAN, Low Power Wide Area Network Technology. What that allows is basically the same sort of communication that you would require for tracking, but at literally a fraction of the cost. The devices are a third of the cost, and the network to put up infrastructure is a tenth of the cost of cell phone technology, and the cost of licensing and running of it is probably it's a tenth as well of the cost of GSM, and a lot cheaper than satellite. So what's happening is trucks that are going cross-border, across the continent, to be able to set up the infrastructure to communicate telemetry data at a fraction of the cost is happening. It's actually happening right now. So if we don't change with what's going on around us, we're going to be out of business. So, big data. How's this all going to happen? So, ultimately, in order for us, just lost my place. Here we go. In order for this to happen, ultimately what we need to do is bring down our costs. Now, we've got fleet management, we've got insurers, we've got, hopefully in the not too distant future, smart cities, maintenance. All these areas are things that we service the transport and logistics sector. All these ideas, all these services are made possible by having data. Now, in order to provide these services in a cost-effective manner, we need to be able to get access to this data easily. So the best analogy that I can give is a cell phone, something like an iPhone App Store or the Android Play Store, where developers, individuals, are given access to be able to submit their work, to be able to publish an application. I mean, we've got kids at the moment. There's a South African kid, a 16-year-old, who wrote a game, and in the first day of putting the game up on the App Store, had 100,000 downloads. This is an individual, a kid, a 16-year-old, had access to 100,000 customers. No, he had access to probably close to 1 billion customers, because the App Store has 1 billion cell phone users on it. So this kid had access to a market of 1 billion customers, and in the first day of operation had 100,000 of those as paying customers. So how do, in the space that we're working in the telemetry space, in order to make our services available, we need to have some collaboration. We need to have some platform, some means of supplying the information that we gather, that we collect, and give it over to an environment, to a marketplace where smart young innovators can get access to this information and write applications and create services around that cheaply and easily. And once that happens, once there's that single platform, we have a network effect. If I'm able to monetize the data that I'm creating, then why would I not want to be on that platform? Both as a consumer of that information and a provider of service that uses that information. So everyone is ultimately going to reach a point where you've got to get on there. So the picture, why a fax machine? How useful is one fax machine? Pretty useless. You need to have dozens of fax machines, right? As soon as there's more and more back in the day, the more fax machines there were, the more obvious it would be to have a fax machine. It seemed to be that was the good example. It seems to be kind of redundant these days, huh? Anyhow, so moving on a little bit. So that network effect, everyone on board, being able to have access to data easily, cheaply, being able to get the information that you want in the format that you want without any effort, whether it be detailed and has information about a customer attached to it, or anonymized for general purpose. These things need to be thought out on a platform level. Essentially what we're aiming at, and what seems to be emerging, is this idea of a platform economy. Things like Uber, Airbnb, marketing platforms like Google AdWords. These are platforms where individuals are able to access technology and reach millions of individuals. It's the opposite of what happened won't elaborate there any further. So essentially, at Go Seamless, we've begun to put together a platform that I'm trying to describe, and that is a platform where tracking providers and the data that they generate is assimilated into a single platform with a single entry point to that data to be able to utilize it for various purposes, whether it be in the insurance market, in the fleet management market, be able to get hold of that data easily and cheaply with very little effort. And one of the applications that we built is a control room environment, and together with our partners, Verifier, we actually offer Bureau as a service, where we've assimilated the tracking data from various providers and put that up into our single platform, and provided an app to a control room environment for the use of risk management and execution management of vehicles and fleets. So one of the other beauties around big data is what can be done with it. So so one of the things here, this is a image from a dashboard that one of our partners, Macrocom, has put together. And what happens here is tracking data and the alerts that are generated are presented on a dashboard, but the magic that's happened is because of the immense amount of data that we have available, we're able to make financial calculations and be able to put a rand value to tracking events that happen. So for instance, speeding is an easy one, especially if your drivers get lots of traffic fines, to put a financial value to that. But there's a financial value beyond just the fine that they're getting. There's the management of having to deal with the fines. There's the risk that that driver, the vehicle, and that cargo, the risk that's increased by the fact that he's speeding. Braking and cornering, if a driver's driving badly, to be able to calculate an actual financial implication of those events is essential. Because ultimately, if I'm able to take all this disparate information, whether it be tracking data, whether it be the usage of that vehicle, and ultimately get to a point where I can put a rand value and have one single measure across my entire organization ultimately, but at least within my fleet, to be able to know how my money is being spent, then I can very easily go and correct the places where I see the costs are going up. So I think that's probably enough for the moment, and we can open up to questions. Anyone?
I just wanted to know that first slide that you've shown. Of course, the US is where they are, because it's the largest economy in the world. Are there any competitive figures with other emerging markets? Are they following the same trend as us?
My intention was to put a couple of the BRIC countries in there, but I actually don't have those figures. Basically, it's somewhere in between. Not nearly as aggressive as the US.
This is still important, it is a growing cost, but I just wanted to see comparatively where we're sitting compared to other emerging markets.
Yeah, so the research that I did was basically it showed you know, like why the dip over there is like pretty clear. It's just after 2008. You know, like after the crash in 2008, there's a major dip. Why did that happen? Because things were booming, and the US invested tremendously in the transport sector. Like, business is great, let's get more trucks on the road, we need to move more goods. And then the market crashed. So there was this massive investment in the logistics space, pushing costs up, but then all of a sudden, business was good, it crashed, and costs went back up again.
Okay, my final comment would then be, or question would then be, comparing it to the US, and which is of course the biggest economy, what can we learn from them if we compare ourselves to them?
Collaboration and efficiency, or efficiency through collaboration. Platform is the way to go. Collaboration. That's the way. It's like we need to share with each other. We need to share our data. We need to share our know-how, and it's a big market, and there's enough space for all of us to play very nicely together. So it's like grabbing market share from each other, at least in the tracking space, isn't going to go anywhere. Why? Because in the next few years, it's already happening. The OEMs are putting their own devices in vehicles. So anyone who's actually in the business of installing units in vehicles, there's a window, and that window's closing. So essentially, a car is going to become a smartphone. Smart cars, simple. Just like you've got a phone and you can put any app on it that you want, you're going to be able to put apps in your car. It's like it's not is it going to happen? It's when it's going to happen. So we need to get ready for it.
Given the number of telematics operations out here and the influx of stuff coming in from China, etc., how long is it that even your big, whichever ones you define them are going to be able to stay in business? And secondly, how will the consumer, or what can be done to ensure that the consumer doesn't get the raw end of the deal by buying into a product that ultimately is not going to be around for longer than a month or 2 or 6 or something like that? What's your opinion?
Okay, so in terms of the first part, so OEMs are putting tracking devices in their vehicles. That is happening. The guys that are at least on the continent, it's going to be a little slower than in the developed world, in the US and in Europe. However, so what tends to happen is we get a lot of junk here. All the vehicles that get produced around the world that don't sell so well, we sort of get the stock. So for the next,
We're talking about the South African market.
yeah,
No, I don't agree.
vehicles.
I'm from Volkswagen, South Africa. I don't agree with you. So
I'm not saying junk in terms of.
No, I absolutely don't agree with you.
I agree.
You agree?
I don't-
comment that we get first class things
I
from
don't
the
agree with you.
reputable manufacturers.
Let me
If you want to
let me
differentiate
clarify.
between that, I understand.
Okay, I'll clarify. So, I stand corrected, but the figures, as far as I know, are, for instance, in Australia, there are the vehicles that are available for purchase are in the hundreds in terms of models. Whereas in South Africa, across all manufacturers, we don't have hundreds, we have thousands.
No, but do you know how vehicles are introduced in the market? And why?
Okay, please, we're here to learn. We're here to learn.
Yeah, firstly, obviously it's based on demand, and secondly, it's also based on what the government allowed, because pre-1994 there were restrictions in terms of which companies could bring vehicles in. Post-1994 it was sort of opened up, and all these foreign brands were allowed to come in. So it's not a matter of the manufacturer, the OEM dumping vehicles, but it's based on the traits that are available to the country and also the demands of the country.
Okay.
I think to comment on that, it's OEM specific. I spent extensive time in the OEM space. It depends on who the OEM is. Now, if you look across Africa as a continent, South Africa VW strong here. Australia not so strong, you don't see them in the roads as often. So I think it just depends on the OEM.
But what are we discussing? That's the point that we're discussing. We're discussing that we're dumping around the vehicle. The OEM is trying to bring in models which suits the market. They try in models, new models, it fails. So it's not a matter of the dumping vehicles that is not suitable in other markets based on what is selling in the local market.
Okay, I obviously misunderstood it differently. I didn't take it in isolation, so apologies. I just thought that what wouldn't sell in another country possibly ends up here.
No, that's not the case.
Which does with certain brands.
That is a story that I'm.
Yes.
If I can comment, and I don't think that the OEMs in South Africa who are part of reputable NAMSA, etc., do anything that would directly prejudice their long-term investment. If you look at Merck, BMW, Mercedes, VW, Audi, massive investments in the country, and I don't think they would jeopardize that. But if I can maybe agree with you on the other hand, we land up with product, certainly by way of a second-hand nature, or something that gets dumped in Africa at large, and that makes us vulnerable because those vehicles that are dumped across the border find their way onto our roads. They impact on our safety and all the other things. And that for me is where the space I operate in, driver training and road safety is critical. And the OEMs today, if anything, they're at the forefront of driving technology to ensure that their vehicles operate at optimum efficiency. Is that a fair comment?
I agree with your last comment, and that's why when I asked my question, I started off, I was referring to South Africa. You brought the Africa's aspect into it, and that's totally different. I agree with the African context, but the South African context is quite different.
Cool. So, apologies if I was talking out of turn there. Cool. So there is a couple of minutes, so I thought maybe I'll mention one other idea, which is just random and might be of interest, is around blockchain and how blockchain and basically distributed ledger technology sort of comes together with telemetry and tracking data. So the basics of blockchain, familiar? Not familiar? Anyone? Familiar? Not? Not. Okay. So lots of ambivalence, I'll explain. Okay. So blockchain primer 101. Where do we begin? Okay. Why do we use banks? Essentially because it is an authority that we trust that will make our financial transactions happen, and we sort of rely on them to give us a guarantee of where we're getting the money from, and the people that are sending us money sort of rely on the bank for the bank to deliver it where it needs to go. It's a pretty inefficient thing to do, because if I'm with someone in person, I could put my hand in my pocket, pull out some cash and give that to them. So why can't we do that digitally? So essentially what blockchain technology allows is for the exchange of value from one individual to another without the requirement of having a middleman. That's the long and the short of what blockchain technology enables. That's the beginning of it. The next step is one of the cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, have developed something called a DApp, which is a distributed application, so smart contracts. And essentially what we can do is when we do this exchange of value from one person to another, we can add conditions into that transaction. And those conditions are things like, this $100 is going to be given to you on the condition that the item that I want delivered is actually delivered. So in principle that sounds lekker, but how do we make that happen? So if I've got tracking data and I've got a vehicle that arrives at a customer and I've got a geofence around my customer, and when that vehicle lands in there, it sends a piece of information up to the servers and says, this vehicle's just arrived in this geozone, and my system knows that that geozone is a customer, and there's another system that says, hey, customer's expecting a delivery from this supplier, then all of a sudden I've got this little kernel of information that says, job done, tick. So we've got these smart applications, these smart contracts that Ethereum put out that can, within them, have attached a little call to a different system somewhere out in the cloud that says, was this fulfilled? Did this happen? And there's constant communication between tracking platforms and the blockchain platform to find out where information is going and where it's moving around. And that smart contract of delivery done gets notified to say this is now being executed, and that value then gets transferred to the recipient of that money. Job done, case and delivery made and paid for. So next generation of supply chain and ultimately industry is automated and digitized. Devices provide information, smart contracts tell us how that information should be used and what should be done with it, and value is exchanged seamlessly and autonomously. And yeah, I think that's a nice little note to end. Cool.
Can I just ask a question? Where do you see the collapse? Told that through some portals, irrespective of what telematics device you've got on, you're providing here, they can all be bundled into one in order to read those reports and that. Where do you see that going? Is that going to get improved, or the providers going to become more selfish as it used to be?
Very simple thing. If I have something that someone's willing to pay money for, am I going to share it or not? If I've got information that you're willing to pay money for, am I going to make it available? So if I have an environment, if I have a platform, if I create an ecosystem with users who are willing to share, to pay money for that information, everyone who has any information that looks like that is going to put it on that platform. So as these ideas progress and become more pedestrian, the providers are going to come on board. It's due course. Cool. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.